Did you ever doubt you were going to do what you want to do?
There were times, but I was like, I'm just going to work hard at it. In med school, like looking back at it, I can't believe like how hard I worked once I was in med school. I'm like, the drive that came once you were in the Caribbean and like, you're like, all right, I got to do this. I think being overseas and far away from your family, you're like, I got to do this. I'm far away from my family and I got to do this for something.
You also see the opposite happen with the other students. They're just like completely shut down and like,
med school and then getting into residency was tough. Even getting into plastics fellowship was hard. Even though, I scored some of the top scores in the country on my in-service exams, which are yearly exams as you're going through training. And even through plastics, I scored high on my in-service, some of the top scores in the country. And I didn't try to go for any further fellowships because I had already been training for almost 10 years. I'm like, all right, I got to get out and do some stuff. I wanted to really work with kids, but I was like...
So how about your path leading up from med school, like the structure of med school, research, residency?
Through med school, even up to like 10 months into my third year of med school, where your first 2 years, you're doing the classes. Your third and fourth year, you're in rotations trying to see what you actually want to do in clinicals. Like starting out, we went from Iran, moved to Rhode Island out of everywhere, which...
Largest state in the country.
Yeah, largest state in the country. Went to Massachusetts for college, then went to the Caribbean for med school. I was in St. Martin, then moved to Michigan for my clinical rotations. And during my clinical rotations, the first 10 months, I was like, man, I chose the wrong thing to do. I've done all this hard work and I hate this. Once I started doing general surgery, I was like, man, this is like, I'll wake up at 3 a.m. and going around on the whole hospital. And like, people are like, why are you being a gunner? And I'm like, I'm not being a gunner. It's just, I like doing this.
Enjoy it.
Because like, tell me to come in at 3 a.m. to round on OB-GYN or internal medicine. I'd be like, you can keep those patients. But once I started doing general surgery, I was like, man, this is something else. And then I had a great experience with the plastic surgeons at the place I was doing clinical rotations. I was in Detroit. The guy did a lot of cleft lip and palates.
Oh, he is world renowned.
That totally like changed my outlook on why I chose medicine and why I want to do it. I did 2 years of general surgery, not knowing where I was going to end up. And then I finally, my third year, I got a permanent job in Phoenix at a great program that I loved because of the experience I had. I got to operate, the skills I gained from there. And then I went to New York for plastics, which was another great experience. Showed me the hustle. Wasn't easy to get into any of these. It was, I dug, talked to multiple people, try to figure out what my steps were to get in there because I knew this was what I wanted to do. And when I started doing plastics, I was baffled by the amount of stuff you actually do in plastics because I didn't even think about it that way. I wasn't thinking of it as cosmetic. I knew the reconstructive aspect, but, hand surgery was another thing. And like just the amount of coverage and how much people depend on you, not just your cosmetic patients, but all the surgeons in the hospital pretty much depend on you when they're in trouble to come and help them, to reconstruct a leg, to reconstruct the scalp. You name it, we've done it. And when I first started out, I did a lot of trauma and then got into breast reconstruction. My practice, I started on my own, but I came and shared an office with a guy that was here for a very long time in Phoenix. He passed away within my first 6 months of being in practice. It was kind of crazy because he had just signed a 10-year lease for our office and the landlords weren't willing to take me taking over the 10-year lease and they gave me a whole bunch of trouble. But at the same time, there was some guy retiring and I took over his practice. From there, it was such a whirlwind first year that, I kind of had to buckle up and become a real adult, run my own practice, like I've never hired a person. And I'm like, man, like you go from like working for pennies and then you're helping like 6 to 10 families like run their lives with you being able to keep them employed. It just made a huge difference. That year just took off and you introduced me to my first partner that came into town, and we were super busy right off the start and kind of crushed it. We added 2 more people, and then you finally came, which was what, my 3rd or 4th year? I forget.
I think like 5th or 6th
5th
year.
or 6th year.
5th probably.
Yeah. Now it's just me and you, and the youngest one's about to join. It's been a great experience to be able to work alongside your brother. It's like just been phenomenal.